My topic is love over fear, which is interesting. Anita just mentioned that. And to get into it, why am I talking about this right now at this point in time? And as Anita mentioned also, because we're in the midst of this global pandemic, but we're also facing economic collapse around the world. We're facing political unrest. We're facing climate change. A lot of things are happening. There's tremendous disruption on our planet right now. One of the reasons that I want to talk about this topic, love over fear, is because we're really being inundated with fear from many different sources all around us. And it's so important that those of us who have this higher spiritual vision remember love and remember to always come from love and counter the fear around us as much as possible with love. And that's why I chose to talk about this topic today. And I'm talking about these topics from a slightly different perspective as someone, not a near-death experiencer, but as a doctor who's worked in hospice with patients at the very end of life. I've been able to sit at the bedside and watch as they make their transition. As Jackie mentioned, my own path was a path of tragedy that led me into hospice work after my father's suicide death. I was really overwhelmed with guilt and grief and ended up going into hospice to see if working with dying patients could help me find a way through my grief. And ultimately, that's indeed what happened. I learned so many spiritual lessons, and from my patients, really discovered these lessons for living life well. And that's why I ended up writing books about it and then becoming a teacher through End of Life University. I have a podcast and I do speaking and workshops to talk about life and death and these spiritual lessons that I've learned. One of the questions that occurred to me as someone who understands that we are spiritual beings on a physical journey here on planet Earth is why would we choose to come here for this physical journey on planet Earth, knowing that we encounter a lot of difficulties and a lot of suffering on this planet? Why would we leave this spiritual realm of beautiful light and love to come here where we have to struggle and toil, and we actually have to spend our lives trying to wake up and become conscious again? What I believe is that we've come here to this planet to learn spiritual lessons that can only be taught here on this physical plane. We occupy human bodies and we live on planet Earth because we want to experience being born, and we want to experience dying in the physical form, and we want to experience the whole spectrum of life that is available to us here on planet Earth that we can't experience without a body, without 5 senses. So that's what makes sense to me. And we're doing all of this because we want to grow spiritually and evolve. And being here on planet Earth and learning these lessons helps us with our spiritual evolution. Those of us who have had near-death experiences have had an accelerated path up. I'm showing it as a staircase, walking up through spiritual growth to that doorway that opens up to the spiritual realm. Those of us with near-death experiences have had that door open suddenly and have been able to evolve very quickly to higher consciousness through that experience. But what I learned for my patients who were dying in hospice, many of them were progressing toward that same doorway, but more gradually and slowly. As they got closer and closer to death, I saw the veil becoming thinner and thinner between their earthly existence and their spiritual existence. So I could sit with them and listen to their stories and let them tell me what they were seeing and experiencing, and get a glimpse of that spiritual realm myself by being in their presence. I could also see the changes that were happening to their physical body as they were becoming more and more fully realized souls, and as the doorway to the spiritual realm was opening for them. And so it is from those patients who shared with me everything they saw and what they were learning that I came up with these earth lessons that were really here on this planet to learn while we're here, to help us with our evolution as souls in the spiritual realm. So I do believe that we're here on this planet to grow in consciousness, and that that's what our lives are really about. We're trying to expand our consciousness as much as possible and to become our best selves, because we each have a consciousness that's growing, but we also have a self that is composed of our physical existence, our physical bodies, our minds, our egos, and all of these have come together to work toward becoming the very best human beings that we can be while we are here on this planet. And I think that's part of our purpose, part of what we're working toward while we're here. And why death itself is a good teacher, but why also near-death experiences are good teachers for us, is that death wakes us up. It wakes us out of our slumber and our illusions about life. Many people are just going through the motions of life and complacent about everything that's happening to them day after day. When we're confronted with death and dying, and I think this is what's happening right now due to the COVID pandemic, many people are facing the death of a loved one in a short amount of time who have not experienced death before. They're also facing their own fear of death. And so I think it's helping a lot of people wake up. Their eyes are opening up and they're looking around to see what really matters in life. And death has been essential at helping them wake up and grow. Death and near-death experiences also show us this new view of life. We no longer look at life on the small scale from where we're living in our day-to-day existence, but we have suddenly seen this expanded view from the universe of what life is all about. And it teaches us how to keep things in perspective that happen to us, because suddenly we can see there's a higher view, there's a higher purpose for everything that's taking place around us on the planet. And we no longer have to stress as much about the small details of life, the day-to-day life that are happening around us. Death and the experience of death, the awareness of death, also deepens us. It takes us deep inside of ourselves. It hollows us out to our very core. And there's a poem I love by Naomi Shihab Nye called Kindness that says, "Before you know kindness as the deepest thing inside, you must know sorrow as the other deepest thing." And I think what she's saying here is that part of our expansion of our ability to love and to care for others is the suffering and the sorrow that we experience here in this lifetime. The sorrow we carry with us hollows us out, deepens us inside so that we become even larger vessels for carrying love and transmitting it to other people here on the planet. And also the experience of death and of grief unite us with all other people on the planet. It is the one thing, besides being born, that all of us share with every other living thing on this planet. When we begin to wake up to that fact, we find it harder to reject other people who are different from us, because actually we discover that everyone is similar to us in the fact that they will also face death of the physical body, and they also experience grief when the people that they love die. And so it's a great uniting factor for anyone, the person we might choose in our lives that we see as being the most different from us. If we actually sat down and had a conversation with them about, when have you experienced grief in your life and what was that like, we would find that we have a great deal in common, that there's very much that we share. And we can use this to find bonds with everyone else on the planet, no matter how different and unique they are. Death reminds us that we are all connected. We're all one. We all have the same creator. We're all here for the same reason. And so there's no reason to reject anyone. We're all connected with one another, but we're also connected with all of life throughohout the universe. As Thich Nhat Hanh said, we are all connected. When you touch one thing, you are touching everything. And what that reminds us is that every word we speak, every action we do, every thought we have can have an impact on everything on our planet. It's so powerful, this connection that we have energetically with everything. And it's why it's really important that we remember love, especially during times of fear, when fear is rampant on planet Earth and it surrounds us, to remember if we can touch one thing with love, we're touching everything and we can change the world. And another fact about the suffering that occurs on planet Earth and the sorrow that we experience, Lao Tzu wrote, "To attain knowledge, add things every day. But to attain wisdom, remove things every day." And he's saying something similar to what I mentioned in the poem, that sometimes we have to lose the superficial things that we worry about. We have to let go of the things that don't really matter in our lives that might be holding us back. And when we do let go, when we have lost the things that are not really important, we're finally in a place where we can attain wisdom. That's what I saw happen with my dying patients. Those patients were losing things every single day as they got closer to death. They were losing their health. They had already lost their employment. They were losing their ability to even walk and move around, and then finally to eat. And so as they faced losing something every day, they began to attain greater and greater wisdom, spiritual wisdom that was very, very powerful for them. So death reveals what really matters in life. It sweeps away all of the superficial things, all of the things that are not important, and leaves us with what is most valuable and most important in life. And for me, and for I think everyone who's probably had an NDE, what really matters is love, because love is the only thing on earth that lasts. Everything else on this planet is temporary and will one day die or dissolve or wear away and transform energetically into something else. But love is the only thing that will last, which is why it's so essential to choose love over fear. Love is the medicine that has the power to heal and cure. It has the power to overcome the fear that is rampant on our planet right now. It has the power to overcome hatred, which is also rampant on our planet. And so for all of us, it's essential that we remember just this simple phrase: choose love over fear. We all have many experiences, I think, right now during our day-to-day lives that may engender fear in us. We keep hearing stories on the news or reading a headline somewhere that may cause us temporarily to experience fear. And those are the times when it's essential that we develop some tools to help ourselves get out of the fear state and back into love as quickly as possible. And sometimes just talking about it is actually enough of a reminder for us that it will stay in our minds. Don't give in to that fear. Choose love instead. Let's go toward love. But near the end of my talk, I'll talk about just a few little tools that you might use to help you choose love over fear. Before we get there, though, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the wisdom of death that I have learned from my patients. So these are, I've divided them into 7 lessons that I learned from my patients, and we'll go through those just so that you have an idea of what people who are at the very end of their lives, who are looking through that doorway and experiencing their own pathway toward the spiritual realm, what they have told me they've been learning as part of the wisdom of death. And so the first lesson is the lesson of impermanence, that life is fragile and fleeting. And this actually makes life more precious for us because we know that our physical existence here on this planet is short-lived. We don't have forever. And so we can learn from this that we really do have to make the most of the time we have. We remember that there's tremendous beauty on this planet and none of it lasts. Everything will change. And so we have to learn to take it all in and appreciate it when it's there in front of us, because it's as fragile as this spider's web. It will disappear and be broken in an instant. So don't let a moment pass without enjoying what life has to offer and taking it all in. And don't waste a moment of your precious life on negative emotions like fear and anger that don't take you toward love, but lead you away from love. The next lesson is the lesson of surrender and learning to go with the flow of life rather than fighting it and going against it. And many of my patients in hospice told me stories about how they spent their entire lives fighting the flow of life and not wanting to let life be as it was, trying to constantly change things or control things that were happening to them. Even I did that after my father's death. I didn't want to go with the flow of my grief that I was experiencing. I really wanted to try to turn the hands of time backwards, to somehow go back to the day before he died and change everything and not allow that event to have happened. And yet it was the most important event of my entire life because it shifted everything in my life. John Kabat-Zinn wrote, "You cannot stop the waves, but you can learn to surf." And that is what I recognized in my patients who were moving the most gracefully through the end of life and toward their deaths, is that they were surfing on these waves of change that were coming and going in life. Every loss they experienced, every new challenge that came to them was just a new wave for them to learn how to surf. And so each of us has to learn also to ride the waves of life as they are coming. And that's true right now. Coronavirus and all of the confusing changes it's bringing about in our own personal lives and for the entire planet. We have to learn how to ride each new wave as it comes and not resist it and not be angry, fearful, or negative about what's happening to us. Carlos Castaneda wrote that it's important to find a balance between the wonder of life and the terror of life. And I really liked this. This image is pretty graphic as far as thinking about, oh my goodness, what a beautiful, wonderful place, and how terrifying to be balancing on a cable across the Grand Canyon. But I think we have to remember life is amazing, absolutely amazing and wonderful and terrifying at the same time. And so we're asked to be here on this planet and carry all of that at once, carry it in both of our hands, that this is wonderful and yet there is also suffering, and there will be pain, and we will have tears, and we will experience sorrow. But there's a balance between all of it. And that's when we can take in the most that life has to offer us. When we're not rejecting the difficulties of life, we're riding the waves, we're going through those difficulties, but we're appreciating the wonder of life at the same time. And the next lesson is the lesson of purpose. This became extremely important for most of my patients who were at the end of life, because all of them had questions about what was my purpose? Why did I come here? And did I fulfill my purpose? For many of them, that question started as a question about, what was my career supposed to be? Did I get the right jobs? Did I get the right amount of schooling to have the right career? Did I fulfill what I was supposed to do? But many of the patients, as they got closer and closer to their dying, began to recognize that no, their purpose was not so much about this career path they had chosen, but much more about what they had learned while they were here on the planet. And they showed me that life on planet Earth is really a classroom. Like, we really do come here to learn all the lessons that our souls are longing to learn from having a physical body. So it helps, I believe, if we can look at life this way, as a classroom, a learning experience. We're here to get whatever we can out of every event that unfolds in our lives. And so we need to learn from every single experience, all the positive ones, also all the painful ones, perhaps all of the ongoing painful ones that we may not be able to recognize contain a gem. Perhaps they're creating a pearl inside of us, a beautiful gem inside that for many years we may not be able to see. And so it's important for us to embrace the classroom experience, the lessons that we're learning, and learn from everything as we go. And trust that within every single thing that happens, even every negative thing that happens to us, there is something that can be learned from it. So focus on the learning that you can do more than you focus on the pain and the sorrow that you feel. Look through the pain and sorrow to try to find the gem that's hidden within inside, and to learn as much as you can learn from those experiences. The other thing that I realized about this classroom of life is that it's really like a potter's hands shaping pottery, that in many ways, life and all of the things that happen to us during life are shaping us into who we came here to be, into our best possible selves. This is how I came to view my father's suicide and the grief process that I went through afterwards, that life had handed me a really hard blow with his death. But through that process, it was shaping me and helping me become my true self, who I came here to be. And when I gave myself over to the potter's hands like clay, I allowed my life experiences to shape me and change me. That is when I suddenly discovered that I was actually on a very beautiful path that I never would have considered or thought of or chosen for myself. And so as we look at life as a classroom full of lessons to teach us, remember that it's constantly shaping us and changing us into who we came here to be. And so part of the surrender and going with the flow of life is allowing ourselves to be shaped and to be changed, and not trying to go backwards and keep things from changing and growing. The next lesson, which was made very clear to me by my patients, was the lesson of presence, being in the present moment and making every single moment count. My patients were so good at doing this, and what was helpful to them was the recognition that they may not be here for much longer. Recognizing that they had only a few days meant that every moment of every day, every single breath was precious to them, and they wanted it to be a moment of love, a moment of celebration with their family, a moment of connection, a moment of joy. And so as I sat with these patients and recognized just how much they were able to be in the present moment, it became clear to me that I was not very good at that. I was not very good at just enjoying whatever moment I'm in, being right here, right now, in this moment. And Carlos Castaneda emphasized the importance of this as well. I want to convince you that you must learn to make every act count, since you are going to be here for only a short while. In fact, too short for witnessing all the marvels of it. And that's a powerful statement to say our lives are so short, and we may be creating all kinds of marvels and miracles that we won't even get to witness while we're here, that will outlast us and be unfolding in the days after we're gone. But that's why it's so important to be in the moment and make every moment count. Be right here, right now, enjoying every cookie, every cup of coffee in the moment. So my patients enjoy the little things. One patient, the picture of the squirrel, he had a squirrel on his deck that was carrying pine cones to a nest, and he would sit and watch the squirrel every day, and he loved it, but was able to give his full attention to that little squirrel, watching it build its nest. And another patient who told me about eating an ice cream cone and how much she enjoyed every single bite of that ice cream cone, which reminded me that I don't think I had ever enjoyed an ice cream cone as much as she described. And then another patient who talked about the sunset and how he would sit every single night and watch the sun go down and watch every little change in the color and watch all the way through the entire sunset. And so these little moments with patients are what told me that these are the valuable moments of our lives when we're actually creating meaning by getting fully engaged in what's happening around us, giving ourselves totally to that moment and enjoying it and loving it to the fullest extent we possibly can, instead of worrying about what will happen tomorrow, what am I going to do next, or being concerned about what you did yesterday or something else that happened in the past. Enjoy the little things that are right here, right now, filling up your life. And the next lesson, which is one of the most powerful lessons any of us can learn here on this planet, and perhaps one of the big reasons our souls choose to have this physical journey, is to learn the lesson of forgiveness, because forgiveness it's a huge lesson to master in this lifetime. It takes a lot of work and a lot of practice. And maybe one of the reasons that we have difficulties and challenges and negative experiences is because they give us opportunities to learn about forgiveness and to practice it with other people in our lives, practice it with ourselves, practice it even with forgiving life itself for what life has handed us, and forgiving God, whatever we perceive God to be. And so the idea is to let go of whatever resentments we are carrying within us. And I think for each of us, if we look back in time, we can find lots of times and experiences where we have been wounded and hurt, and we might be carrying pain and resentment and bitterness from those experiences. And all of that needs to disappear. All of that needs to go. And that's why the practice of forgiveness is powerful, because we need to release whatever energy we're carrying by those old memories. We have tied up our energy in keeping alive resentments and bitterness from the past, and that becomes a weight of baggage that pulls us down. It actually pulls our consciousness down to a lower level. It pulls our life energy down so that we're not able to live as fully and as joyfully as we could live when we're carrying this weight of past experiences. So forgiveness is so powerful. It can change everything for us spiritually and emotionally, yes, but also physically. A lot of studies have been done that show people who are able to forgive and let go of resentments have much better physical health as well. So it's clear that forgiveness is one of the greatest tasks we can undertake. And it involves opening our hearts in a certain extent to be able to forgive, to offer love to others, and to be able to let go of blaming them. One thing that has helped me with this idea of forgiveness is recognizing the previous lesson that life is a classroom. And if I'm here to learn, then everyone who hurt me or wounded me was, in a sense, one of my teachers that was giving me something I could learn from, a way to grow in tolerance and understanding and patience, maybe a way to get to know myself better. And so taking on this new attitude toward the past and what has happened and toward life as a classroom is one of the steps that can open us up and help us become more forgiving in life. And that is one of the most essential lessons that we can learn and work on. And I will tell you, every patient I cared for at the end of life in some way or another was struggling with forgiveness. Many of them had people in their lives they wanted to forgive. Many of them needed to forgive themselves for actions that they took as mistakes in their past, which we really know now there aren't really mistakes, they're just learning opportunities. But they needed to go through an actual process and the act of forgiveness in order to let go of all of the self-blame that they had been carrying for years. So I saw patients who were completely consumed at the end of life with how to forgive, who had big lists of people they needed to forgive, of actions they themselves had taken that they wanted to forgive. And it became clear to me that each of us needs to start right now working on forgiveness in our lives because it's such an important task. If we can do it now, earlier, it will change everything for us as we move forward toward our own end of life. And then the next lesson, of course, is the theme of all that I want to talk about is love. And over, my patients kept telling me that they were discovering that love is the one thing that mattered to them more than anything else. The people they loved, the pets they loved, for some it was the garden that they loved, but they began to recognize how many times in their life they had abandoned love or ignored love, when love they were discovering is the thing that matters more than anything. And so one of my patients said this very thing to me. I just now figured out that love is what really matters. And I'm only going to be here for a few more weeks. I won't be able to tell anyone else what I've learned. And he's the patient who said to me, would you share my story? Would you tell other people how important love is? And that's one of the reasons I'm here, and one of the reasons that I share this idea that love is what really matters. Love is worthy of all of our time and energy and attention. And forgiveness actually goes hand in hand with love because is what allows us to love more deeply. When we forgive, we find much more room inside and more expansion in our consciousness to be able to carry more love and bring more love to the planet. I share some stories about finding love, and one of the stories is that I need to shorten for you because I'm almost running out of time here, is just learning that even patients and families who were angry and upset always could be transformed with love. That simply bringing love to them and holding them in a loving space could transform them into their better selves. And so I believe that that works in any situation that we're in. Jennifer Dukes Lee said, in a world where you can be anything, be kind, show love, be kind to one another, care for one another. That should be our mantra right now as we're going through COVID-19. We need love and kindness everywhere as much as we can give it. And the seventh lesson is the lesson of suffering, which is the need to embrace all of the seasons of our life, no matter what happens. Sometimes it's summer, sometimes it's spring, but sometimes it's winter, and we feel the cold and we see death around us. We need to be able to embrace all of those seasons, whatever comes our way. Again, from Carlos Castaneda, he said, "You have everything needed for the extravagant journey that is your life." And I love the emphasis on the fact that you have already what you need for life. You may not have everything you want, but you have what you need. And your life, just as it is an extravagant journey. And if we could live in every moment recognizing that, we would celebrate and we would enjoy each moment that we have. And so it's important that we learn to make something sweet with what life has given us, no matter what it is. And we may feel life has given us less than some other people, but we can still create a beautiful life out of what we've been given. So these 7 lessons, I won't go through them again just because our time is getting short. But they teach us about the cycle of life and death. And I wanted to remind you again to always choose love over fear, and to share a few practices for remembering to choose love over fear. Right now, especially, I'm talking about as we're dealing with COVID-19, remember deep breathing as a tool that you can use anytime you start to feel anxious or angry or upset. Take a few deep breaths, because they activate the relaxation response in your own nervous system, and it will calm you down. It will stop the fight or flight reaction, slow your heart rate down, and help you get back into a calm state where you can choose love instead of fear. You can do an exercise to expand your heart with love by putting your hands over your heart, breathing into your heart, and watching your heart fill with love. Also practice gratitude every day. Find something to be grateful for every single day, no matter what's happening in your life. I have another exercise I call look down and look up. Look down and remember the tiny moments of life. Look down at the flower growing in your neighbor's garden. Look down at a blade of grass and think that every single life form on this planet is connected to me, and they're all part of this divine energy of our planet, and they all have a reason and a purpose for being here. And then look up and see the sky and the sun and the clouds and the stars and the moon, and realize we're part of a vast universe. And allow that to take you to that higher view of higher consciousness, where you remember that what's happening right now in my day-to-day life should not throw me off course. I'm a child of the universe, and I'm here for love. And so look down and look up in order to remember that. And lastly, I have the loving kindness blessing that I use all the time in my own practice. May I be at peace. May my heart remain open. May I realize the beauty of my own true nature. May I be healed, and may I be a source of healing for this world. So my goal for all of you as you choose love over fear is to live with joie de vivre, the French saying, which means the joy of being alive. May you feel that joy in every moment, and always choose love over fear. Thank you for being part of this presentation with me.